An eye for an eye, a tariff for a tariff. Donald Trump has Europe's economy in his crosshairs, and it's all because the EU sells more goods to the US than the other way around.
I'm not happy with the European Union, I want to tell you. And we're going to win that. We're going to win that financial battle.
His weapon of choice? Import tariffs that aim to put pressure on European manufacturers from various sectors. But the big question on everyone's mind is, what do US tariffs mean for Europe? In the space of a couple of days, US President Trump has been throwing around new tariffs the world over. What this really means is Trump is slapping higher fees on goods imported into the US for sale. Europe's not safe either. He's got a 20% tax locked and loaded for the Union. As always with Trump, unpredictability is the name of the game, a playbook that means what's true today could entirely change by tomorrow. Still, all of Europe is holding its breath, particularly the automobile industry. That's because the tariffs for this sector are even higher. The US has just ramped up import taxes on cars by a staggering tenfold. Trump calls it Liberation Day, and he's hailing it as a breakthrough for the US auto industry. While the Americans have so far only levied a 2.5% tariff on foreign cars, the EU is demanding 10%. The fact that Trump is now outdoing them deals the Europeans a hard, dizzying blow. After all, the US is a major sales market. The EU exported over 750,000 new vehicles in the US in 2024. And Europe sells nearly 5 times more cars to the US than the other way around. Donald Trump's tariff offensive is targeting one of the EU's largest manufacturing industries, which accounts for up to 7% of GDP in countries in the Union. Whether in automobile manufacturing, parts production or sales, the industry supports some 13 million European jobs. The country that stands to take the biggest hit is Germany, and by a long shot. Germany exports more cars to the US than any other EU country. After Germany, Italy and Sweden are next in line to take the biggest hit, followed by Slovakia, which makes more cars per capita than any other country in the world. According to German consulting firm Kearney, up to 30,000 EU automotive jobs could be cut. In short, the tariffs point to a rough road ahead, and it couldn't come at a worse time, say car manufacturers.
These announcements come indeed at a very challenging moment already, because industry is in the midst of a huge transformation to green and clean mobility. There's also a lot of competition, for example, from China and elsewhere. So to have these additional tariffs to be paid and to be digested as a sector is very, very tough.
And it's not just car manufacturing that's affected. Since mid-March, US import tariffs on steel and aluminium have risen to 25%. Once again, Europe has a trade surplus with the US in both sectors. Donald Trump has also threatened to tax European wine and spirits at 200%, and EU pharmaceuticals, which are widely sold in the US, could also be targeted. In 2023, the US imported over 500 billion euros worth of EU goods, while the EU bought only around 350 billion euros in US-made products. That's a trade deficit of about 157 billion euros, which the US hopes to reduce with these tariffs. Trump is fed up of freeloaders. The USA is once again being taken advantage of by the Europeans, but experts see it differently. They argue that the US can easily afford its trade deficit. In fact, importing so many goods is less of a weakness and more of a sign of the country's global appeal.
There's a lot of investment coming into the United States. So as a result of that investment coming in, there is more demand in the United States than there is supply. And that is a normal outcome. But he doesn't see it that way. He sees a trade deficit like a businessman looks at his company. I am buying more from you than I'm selling to you. Somehow I'm making a loss. And that kind of thinking makes a lot of sense for a company, but it makes no sense at all for a nation.
The question arises as to whether Trump might have completely different motives in mind. He's used tariffs as a bargaining chip before, not just for economic goals. Case in point, he pressured Colombia to take back deported migrants by threatening trade penalties. Then there's hard, cold cash. Customs revenue helps for tax cuts, one of his biggest promises to voters. And of course, higher tariffs protect American brands from foreign competition and put pressure on European companies to shift production to the US. One thing's for sure, Trump's announcements and his flip-flopping on tariffs has kept Europe on a knife edge for weeks, rattling markets and businesses alike. Like in many finance hubs throughout Europe, this trading room at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange has been rife with uncertainty ever since Donald Trump began threatening major tariff hikes.
Nicht wenige Börsianer sprechen davon, dass es ein Ende des liberalen Welthandels sein könnte. Dennoch wird man sehen, was zu erwarten ist. Also heute Morgen starten die Aktienmärkte entsprechend schwach.
Such shifts in the market can impact your portfolio, whether you're a major or a minor investor. Add to that the fact that higher tariffs would cause prices to go up in the United States, which could ultimately hurt Europe too.
When you introduce some customs, some tariffs, and the price, the average price level or the lowest price level will grow, then the inflation will also grow. It's the same situation in Europe, because Europe will try to import a lot of things, but on a higher price.
For companies directly in the firing line of US tariffs, the worry is very real. In France, these include producers of wine and spirits, as well as trade groups like this one, which promote Armagnac overseas.
Le sujet, il est simple à comprendre. Lorsque une taxe de 200% va être appliquée sur nos Armagnacs, un produit qui partira à $100 de l'Armagnac, arrivé $300 sur le marché, vous perdez le marché. Donc c'est le stop net d'une filière, ne serait-ce que par des menaces.
So where do the price hikes leave consumers? As you might imagine, they'll create a domino effect that will ultimately weaken the purchasing power of everyday Europeans.
To put 200% tariffs on wines coming from Europe, that's going to have an effect on incomes in the agricultural sector.
So what leverage do consumers have in order to push back? Salling Group is Denmark's largest grocery chain, with 650 stores that now place black stars next to products of EU origin. This lets customers know how their purchases can boost EU producers and potentially boycott American ones.
Well, people has been wanting to buy European goods. Obviously, with geopolitics going on at the moment, I guess you can guess yourself why.
In the aisles of this shop in Copenhagen, the idea has had a positive response from customers.
Det har gjort mit liv så nemt. Det er det bedste, der er sket for mig.
Meget høje toldsatser, og vi må svare igen ved så vidt muligt og så vælge nogle europæiske varer.
The EU isn't letting Trump's tariff attack slide. Brussels would rather negotiate a deal. After all, the US is Europe's biggest trading partner. But if Trump wants a trade fight, he'll get one, says Ursula von der Leyen.
Europe holds a lot of cards, from trade to technology to the size of our market. If it is necessary, we have a strong plan to retaliate, and we will use it.
The EU has been discussing special tariffs on US products like jeans, whiskey or motorcycles. But several deputies in the EU Parliament want to hit America where it really hurts, the tech industry. Giants like Amazon, Google and Netflix, you might know them. The reasoning? The US exports way more digital services to Europe than the other way around, creating a trade deficit that's flipped. Plus, it's no secret that America's tech billionaires have close ties to the White House. Some experts warn it could spark a major escalation.
It will definitely have a big impact on some very big and influential US companies, but they should retaliate in a moderate way. We do not want to make the United States into an enemy of the European Union.
I think it would be better if we not react with other large tariff, but we could somehow negotiate a better cooperation. So I would be happy if all the tariffs will be lower and not higher. But I think Trump is really committed, and in the last 30, 40 years, it's not the first time when he spoke against the European cars.
So it should not make itself small, but yeah, be strong. At the same time, it should avoid indeed a full-blown tit-for-tat trade war that will benefit no one. not in Europe, not in the US. So that's a difficult place to be in. It's about finding out what the other side really wants and to see if you can meet each other somewhere.
And that's a wrap for today's show. Thanks for tuning in. In a nutshell, Europe is on the brink of being dragged into a salty tariff whirlpool. The solution? More diplomacy and less main character energy. Or at least that's how it's supposed to be. Leave comments below. Either way, stay chill and see you next time.